Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried & Jensen. As proud sponsors of BeliefCast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Inspires BeliefCast. As always, thank you for believing in me and tuning in week after week. It means the world to me. I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors, Maury Nutrition. They're the official drink now of the BeliefCast, which is kind of cool. Siegfried & Jensen, Wasatch Recovery, and Thread Wallets. And then the music that you heard at the beginning and at the end of the podcast is by my good friend Paul Cardall, who's also been on the podcast. He's an award-winning pianist and amazing human being. So thank you for letting us use your music. And again, thanks for tuning in. We've got another amazing guest today. We have Catie Cartisano. Did I say that right?
You sure did.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Catie, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we're in for a treat today, guys. Catie has a very impressive life. She's been through a lot. She's achieved a lot. A little background on her. She was born and raised in Oklahoma up until the age of 17 and then moved to Utah. She's dedicated herself to serving in multiple boards such as DOPL, Criminal Justice Advisory Council. She advocates for expungement laws in Utah. She also is an Olympic weightlifter, snowboarder, which is really cool. I can't wait to talk about that. A wake surfer, competitive dressage rider.
You said it great.
Wow. And guys, I didn't know what that was. I'll be honest. I had to look it up. I'm like, what is that? And I'm going to have Catie tell you more about that. She's also, she's passionate about horses, books like Powell. She has a bachelor's of social work and a master's of social work as well. And along with an advanced substance use disorder training from the University of Utah, she has over 13 years of experience. She specializes in PTSD and trauma. She's certified in EMDR. I mean, the list goes on. You've been through a lot. You've done a lot. You're doing a lot of good in this world. She's also a clinician and one of the directors at Balance House.
Yes.
Which is sober living for men. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Is there female as well?
No female, but we have a full continuum now. We have a residential.
Oh,
we have,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a year-long 4-phase program. We used to be a sober living, but now
now you got the whole gamut.
Got the whole thing.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Of course.
But Balance House, honestly, has one of the best reputations here in Utah. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never heard one bad thing, honestly, about Balance House. So very respectful. And again, Catie, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to hear that about Balance House. It's very special to me.
Yeah. I know you're passionate about helping people, and so that makes sense. So why don't we start, Catie? Tell us about growing up in Oklahoma and a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, I know. When you say all those things on my resume, I'm like, who is that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So just to get started, I actually, I was born in Washington State.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then my family lived in Utah for a few years, but then when I was 6, we moved to Oklahoma. And it was quite a culture shock. So I moved to this tiny little town called Tishomingo, and it's in Indian territory. So I'm Native American.
Tishomingo?
Yeah, it's called Tishomingo.
Wow, okay.
Nobody, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm part Native American. And so all my family, a lot of my family is down there.
Okay.
And so leaving Utah and going to southern Oklahoma was quite a culture shock.
I bet.
Yeah. It was really, really difficult for all of us, for my siblings, for my parents. Mm-hmm. And, that was kind of like the start of having to move all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So a big part of my story or trauma, you would say, is moving. So I would go from one place to another in a very short amount of time. But Oklahoma was the longest place I ever lived.
Okay.
As a child. Yeah.
Yeah, and moving is difficult, especially for children. I think we as adults take that for granted, if you will. We don't understand like how traumatic that can be. I've got all these friends, and all of a sudden now we're going somewhere brand new, and I got to figure this out again.
Yeah.
Is that what it kind of felt like at times?
Yes. Yeah. Constantly. And I went to 3 different high schools in 3 different states.
Oh man.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, looking back on it now, I'm kind of proud of how well I actually did, but it was difficult. So my mom is a veterinarian, so she went to Oklahoma State University. So when we were younger, financially, my family didn't have a lot.
Okay.
And so my mom, as we're living in this, small town in Oklahoma, she realized like she needed to do something to kind of get us out of that.
Right.
So when I was 17, we ended up moving to Utah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was 2 months into my senior year.
Oh,
yeah.
my
It was brutal.
Wow, that is brutal.
Yeah.
Senior year, that would be so hard.
Yeah.
Because you really don't have time when you come to a new place to meet people and form, I don't know, strong relationships, I guess.
Yeah.
At least in the beginning, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's how I started to learn how to be the new girl, right? So when you go from place to place, it's like learning to make friends, learning to show up however you need to survive in a lot of senses.
Yeah, you have to dig deep sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I often say to my clients from time to time, I really believe that life happens for us, the good and the bad, right? And we'll probably get to that because I think part of that challenge is what you led to what you do today, even.
For
right?
sure, yes.
And I know you had some struggles growing up and maybe got caught up into some things you shouldn't be doing. Let's talk a little bit about that if that's okay, because, obviously that led to some trials in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So my family is riddled with addiction and alcoholism on both sides of my family.
Mm-hmm.
My older brother also struggled with addiction.
Okay.
So when I was really young, he ended up going to treatment. I think I was 12.
Oh, okay.
And so at first I didn't want any part of using substances, doing any substances. But when I moved to California for my sophomore year, I was playing sports, but then I was introduced to drugs, cocaine, alcohol, all marijuana, all the things that kind of made me feel like I was a part of, right?
Yeah.
So during that time in California, I was 15 years old, and it was just my father, myself, and my brother, and we lived in a house with no furniture for a whole year.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, how was that?
It's kind of a blur now. I'm just,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really hard, but that's kind of when I started to really go downhill. So my mom and my brother too, both of us, we started to struggle, and my mom's like, okay, come back to Oklahoma. So we moved back to Oklahoma for a year. Things got worse.
Okay.
Worse and worse. So I was drinking all the time. I was doing cocaine all the time. I was staying out late. I was getting in trouble with the law. Boys, everything that you can imagine started for me.
Yeah.
And I remember being in so much pain all the time.
Yeah.
Right. I actually, about a week ago, I found some of my old journals from that time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I don't even remember keeping a journal.
Wow.
Yeah. But talking about this young girl that was like desperate to find her group of friends, to figure out who she was, and just in a lot of pain. And so my family brought my brother and I back to Oklahoma. Things got worse. And then 2 months into my senior year, my mom moved us all to Utah. Yeah. So at that time, I had gotten a fake ID from my sister.
Yeah.
Right. And so things started to. Sorry, were you going to ask?
No, I was going to say, so it just progressed from there. I mean, so you move at the height of your struggle, which just adds more to the struggle, right?
Yeah.
And again, traumatic. Those moves are traumatic, right?
Yeah.
Trauma is in a bunch of different forms, and people might think really moving's traumatic, and yes, it is. When you're a kid and you're trying to establish yourself, you even said it in the journals. You're trying to find who are you?
Yes.
Who you gonna what does it look like? And so you get here to Utah. You start school up again. You got half the year left, I'm assuming, ish.
Yeah.
Of your senior year.
Yeah. And I mean, again, Utah, I didn't remember Utah from when I was younger. So coming to Utah again from Oklahoma,
Right.
I was like, what is this place? It was really, really difficult for me. So at that time I started hanging out with people that were older. I went to Hillcrest High School.
Okay.
Yeah. I was, 2 months in, and I still don't know how I graduated. I don't know how, because I was never there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I was extremely, extremely depressed. And my sister ended up, moving back home for a while. I had her driver's license, so I would use that. And I really started to hang out with older people.
Okay.
Right. So I was going to Las Vegas. I'm like 17 years old, 18 years old, going to Vegas, going to clubs, going to bar,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was exposed to some pretty gnarly, situations at such a young age. Yeah.
Did your mom know that you were struggling this bad? Did she, she had an idea obviously, but did she know the extent of it?
She didn't know at that time. She knew I was struggling, but she didn't realize how bad things were getting because I would disappear. I would leave for like a week.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I ended up graduating high school, and after that, things continued to get worse. So I got a boyfriend that was about 10 years older than me, and we started using heavily. So that's when I was introduced to painkillers. That's when I started using cocaine, smoking crack, doing all of these. Again, looking back now, I don't know how I lived through it. Right.
Right.
So, doing all those things like pills, cocaine at 19 was the first time I went to treatment. I actually went to a place right down the street from here.
Oh,
called
really?
The Arc. Yes.
Oh yeah. I remember the Arc. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's no longer there, but
no, yeah, it's no longer there. That was my first.
Really?
Yeah. That was my first treatment episode. So I go in and I stayed for about 54 days. And I came home for Christmas, and, we call it, AMA.
AMA.
AWOL.
Yep. AWOL. Yeah.
And so I never went back. So I jumped in. I jumped in a U-Haul with my boyfriend that was 10 years older than me and drove to Seattle.
Oh, wow. Right from treatment.
It was about a week. It was like a week.
So did you feel like you were like white knuckling it, if you will, at treatment? Just kind of like, I'm going through the motions here. I'm going to just try to please whatever, or do you feel like you really were trying to put in some work or because typically you probably were planning the relapse, if you will, before you even left treatment.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, totally. I was there. I didn't know anything about anything at that point. I got there and I did learn stuff about myself, and I was able to clear. I don't even remember the first week. I was so cloudy, and it was a really, it was a really bizarre experience for the first 2 weeks. I kind of felt like I was floating around, and, I really tried to engage, but in the back of my mind, I was young.
Yeah.
I was 19 years old.
For sure.
I'll be fine. I just needed to go to a place and stop and then go back out. So I, when I came home on Christmas, I knew I wasn't going back. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I knew I wasn't going back. So, I packed up and I left and moved to Seattle in 19, and I didn't come back to Utah for 5 years.
Wow. And were you with that guy the entire time up there? And I would imagine things were just bad and worse. And
yeah, I almost died. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was terrible. That was at the height of OxyContin. I don't know if you've seen the documentary Dope Sick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
I'm part of that era.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's wild to think that I'm still alive. So, when I got up there, I did have a job at Olive Garden. I was a server.
Right.
But, I had cash and the drug use just got worse. And so it was a really, really toxic relationship. Oh my gosh. Right. I was young. He was older. He was my drug dealer, basically.
Wow.
Right.
Dang.
Yeah. So
you're up there for 5 years. And then what? Did you end up leaving him and realizing you needed more help, or what happened?
So, thinking back now, so I had a really bad overdose. So that was before, I was doing pills all the time, but I was also taking Xanax. I was drinking. So I was combining a lot of substances. And actually, I don't think I've ever talked about this part. There were multiple times where I didn't wake up for a while. Like, it just,
wow.
Yeah, I was really skinny. I wasn't eating.
Yeah.
And I was putting all these things in my system. But then towards the end, I owed some not good people a lot of money. So I literally packed everything and I left him. I had to get away from him because I was dying. And I came back to Utah, and I moved back in with my parents at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a courageous move to leave him. Like, because even though you knew it was bad, we hear stories all the time with our clients who stay stuck in a relationship year after year after year, and they know it's bad, they know it's not good for them, but they won't leave.
Right.
So for you to actually get to that point and finally do it, that says something about you.
Yeah. Yeah. There was something, I'm like, I have to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Did he try to follow you? Did he try to?
He wanted me to stay.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And he was also in his addiction. He wasn't bad. We were just both strung out.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, everyone's good.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
You're good. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Just doing bad things.
Right. Yeah. And we remained friends for a while, and he's actually doing well now too.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Glad. Good for him.
Right.
Shout out to him.
I know. Yeah.
So you come home. Did you go back into treatment? What was the plan when you came home? Because you obviously were still a mess.
Yeah. I mean, I was still really addicted to opiates. So I had just had enough to get me back to Salt Lake.
Oh, man.
And then when I got back, that's when I was introduced to heroin. Right. So,
So it just kept going.
It got worse.
It even got worse then.
It got way worse.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was introduced to that, and I had done it a few times when I was in Seattle. But when I got to Utah, it was much cheaper. And so I was like off to the races at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So, I became an IV heroin addict. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. At like 23 years old, 22 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're probably wondering at times, how did I get here?
Yeah, it was awful.
Because you didn't plan, you didn't seek out, well, I hope one day I'm a heroin addict, right?
Yeah.
And no one ever does.
Right.
But it tells you how bad things were getting if you get to that point where you're putting a needle in your arm.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, and I didn't know how to stop. Yeah. I remember having these moments where I was like desperate. I was desperate to stop. It's really interesting. So the only reason I actually stopped is because I got arrested. But yeah. Right.
Sometimes that's what you need, right?
That's the only thing. That is the only thing that was going to make me stop, because it was really hard. It was really hard withdrawals, all of those things. So the day I actually got arrested, I remember waking up and I was like 99 pounds. Oh yeah, I was so skinny. And
oh my gosh.
I remember thinking like something has to change or I'm going to die. And so that day, I got pulled over twice by the police because I had expired tags.
Oh, okay.
And I got, I got away. Like they let me off. And it was like that day God was saying, you're not getting out of this. And so I got in a really bad car accident. Oh, yeah. Yeah. A really bad car accident, and then ended up going to jail. And I had been arrested before, but I knew when I had all these warrants because I was using my sister's name to get out of things. This is why I'm such a big expungement. We can talk about like expungement activist.
Yeah, definitely want to hear about this.
Yeah, so I got arrested and I had a ton of warrants, and I knew when I went to jail this time, I wasn't getting out. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
So now you're sitting in jail. You were in this bad accident. And this sounds like a dumb question, but I'd like our listeners, like, what was your psyche at the time? What was the feeling? What was your mental status?
Oh, I was so sick. So for the first month, I couldn't even eat. I couldn't sleep. I ended up having a seizure because I came in and I was using, benzodiazepines and heroin. And I ended up having a seizure, and I had to go into medical because I was so skinny. I couldn't keep anything down. Right. And so I'd had warrants all over. Murray, Holiday, all of our surrounding cities. I joke now. I was like, I got in trouble in every city. When I went and got my record expunged, I had to go to like 7 different courthouses. It was a nightmare.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. So I went to, I had to do that afterwards because I had to go to a bunch of court appearances because I had all of these charges all over. But I was so sick, and about a month in, I went to, where I had a really bad felony. And I remember the judge, he called my dad up, and I might get emotional as I talk about this, but he called my dad up to the stand and said, excuse me.
You're good.
The judge said, how is it to see your daughter in handcuffs? And he said, it's better than a funeral. Oh. Yeah. In front of the whole courtroom. Whoa. Yeah. It was brutal. So,
wow. I'm sure that hit you hard to have your dad say that.
Oh my God, it was awful. Because my family didn't give up on me. They should have. Yeah. I mean, quite frankly. So the judge said, he sentenced me to a year in jail, and then said, I'm sending you to treatment. You have to do all the treatment. You have to do all the aftercare. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this to save your life. And he saved my life. Wow. He saved my life. Yeah. So I was in jail. I got released a little bit early. I can't remember. It's been forever at this point. But then I ended up going to a county funded treatment program because my family was like, they were done paying for things.
Yeah. They are tapped out.
They were tapped out.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So I went to a local treatment center called The Haven.
Yep. I know The Haven. Yeah. I've been to a Haven for a few times.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I went there and that place really did save my life. I needed the therapeutic community, to be able to really hold me accountable for things.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of work while I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know addiction can hit anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not naive to that, but seeing you today, like people would be, they're going to be blown away. Like Catie was doing all that. That's what she was doing. She was caught up in all of that. She went to jail for a year. I mean, again, and I know it's not about how you look. It's just, man, you look so, vibrant and good, and you're doing, you're a go-getter.
Mm-hmm.
What I got from looking and studying you, like you put your mind to something, you do it. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm stubborn, but once I start something, I'm like, yeah.
And so that's a good thing, I guess, right? To be a little stubborn.
Yeah.
In this. So you go to the Haven. Haven's not an easy program.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
It was so brutal. Yeah.
So how long did you end up staying at the Haven?
So I was there for 3 months, but then I moved into their sober living.
Okay.
Right? They had a sober living. And I stayed in their sober living for a year. I did all I was desperate. Wow. I did not want to go back to jail.
Yeah.
But it was really hard for me to kind of get into AA originally. Mm-hmm. Thinking back, I don't know why. Again, I think I was just stubborn.
You're stubborn, yeah.
Stubborn. It's still a thing.
Yeah.
So I lived in the transitional housing for about a year. Dang. And I worked at the Olive Garden. I had no car. I had,
my goodness.
Yeah, it was very, it was a very humbling time for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and what that tells me, at that point, at least, you were in it to win it.
Totally.
Like, you know what? I will walk to work. I will live it in the Haven, in this sober living that can sometimes feel like relapse living. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot going on, right? And it's easy to get caught right back up into the same old criminal stuff. Mm-hmm. But that does say, again, a lot about you. Like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And if I have to walk to my job, I will walk to my job.
Yeah. In the snow. But I was so desperate to change because I was so miserable. Yeah. And, I remember just like hoping I wouldn't wake up sometimes. Like when I started to wake up and not wish to be dead, that was when I was like, I want to feel like this. Like I want to, love myself again and, see my full potential. I was super tired of hurting my family too.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. A lot of people in the Haven and in, ADC in Salt Lake County, they don't have anybody. And I did.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's interesting when you look back, like all the things that were put into place, if you will, that led to you. Again, like you said, it saved your life.
It saved my life.
And not only did it save your life from all the stuff you're doing now, like, so you go through all this, but yet, man, you've got all these degrees in social work and the master's level. You got every degree you can need, advanced SUDC. You're trained in trauma work and PTSD and EMDR, and you're at the balance house and you're one of the head honchos over there. That's what we're going to call you. But I mean, again, you're doing all this stuff. How did that evolve? Like, did you get to a place where you're like, you know what? If this saved my life, I want to maybe be a part of that moving forward?
Yeah. One thing that my family is full of really, really strong women. They are really strong, highly educated women, from my grandma, my mother, my sister. And so I knew that if I wanted to be able to take care of myself, nobody was ever going to take care of me. I had to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to go to school. I knew I had to go to school, or I was going to be working at Olive Garden forever.
Yeah.
Right. And it was really difficult. So I applied to the SUDC program. I got into the SUDC program. And at that point, I just kept going. The problem was my record.
Oh, yeah. This is where the expungement advocacy comes into play. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. It was difficult. So I got into the SUDC program. But then when I applied to the BSW program, with all of my criminal charges, I had multiple felonies, misdemeanors.
Right. Yeah.
I had to get letters. I had to,
Right.
It was kind of traumatizing because they make you go through each charge, explain what happened,
Oh, man.
explain how you changed. And I can't tell you how many times I had to do that in my first 10 years of sobriety.
Wow.
Yeah. Every job, every apartment, every time I went to school, all of my internships, everything.
Man.
Right. And, even at, 3 or 4 years sober, having to relive that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been traumatizing.
It was awful. And it was embarrassing. It was so embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
Because once you're in school and you're going through a social work program, there are people in recovery, but it's also a different world.
Yeah, definitely. And it's almost like, guys, that's the old Catie.
Right.
That's not me anymore. Why do we have to keep reliving it? I want to make a difference. Let me be a part of this program. Let me move forward, that kind of thing. And so, but again, you didn't give up. Again, there's that stubborn piece, if you will, or I would like to say driven.
Yeah.
You're a very driven person.
Right.
Which because you could have easily said, this is too much. I'm not going to, I'll settle and go work over here.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And, I realized that looking back now, I'm like, oh my God. Anytime I think about getting my doctorate, I'm like, if I going back to school, trauma response.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. But I had to keep going.
Yeah.
And at that point, when I got into the MSW program, so I'm a forensic social worker. So I wanted to work in the jails and the prisons and the VA, which I ended up doing.
Okay.
But, applying to the prison when you have a criminal record.
They're like, is this serious?
Yeah.
Is this woman serious? What's going on here?
Yeah. So I started the expungement process, and I had a great friend that I worked with. I worked at First Step House for a long time as well, and I can I know I'm a little all over the place.
You're good.
So I went to a friend that had just gotten his record expunged and said, how did you do it? And he told me. And he had a wife that was an attorney. And she actually helped me for free just because she's amazing.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
But it was so expensive. It took so long. I had to go through each different courthouse. And I realized I was good at school. I was smart. I could figure all that out. But I thought for people that stuff like that is hard for them, no one's ever going to get it done.
Yeah. They'll just give up.
They'll just give up.
Yeah.
Right. It was expensive. You had to get certificates going to each courthouse. Man. It took me almost 3 years.
Holy cow.
To get everything expunged. So now I'm a huge advocate. That's why I was on the Criminal Advisory Council.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I've done stuff on TV and up at the Capitol to lobby to make the process easier, especially for nonviolent offenders.
Right.
Right. So, not being able to get an apartment.
Yeah.
And I even getting a job. Right.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for some of the guys I work with now because it's like, you just feel like you're bumping up against the system.
Yep. And again, we know this in our industry that a lot of times that it can be a reason for them to go blow up their life again. It's like, well, if I can't do this, what's the point kind of thing?
Yeah.
So again, it says a lot to where your head was with what you wanted to do. You didn't give up and you kept pushing forward.
Yeah.
And now you're doing that and trying to help others do the same.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It was cool. So as I got all that finished, I worked at the VA, and I love that. I worked with a lot of traumatized veterans. I worked in the HUD-VASH program. I did some stuff in the PTSD clinic.
Okay.
And so that's when I fell kind of in love with that. And then I applied to work at the prison, and I got the job.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I worked in Max and Super Max and general population. And it was the best experience I've ever had.
Yeah.
But at that point I realized like the prison is a mental health hospital.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for me.
Yeah.
To see.
I had an experience. I got invited by Toastmasters to speak at the Utah State Prison when it was out there at the point. It's no longer there now, which is weird.
It is weird.
And I went and spoke at Promontory out there.
Yeah.
And there was 120 inmates, and I was going there to share my story. And I've never done that before at a prison. I've done it at detention centers and stuff. And, again, you have these ideas of what it's going to be like, right? It blew me away. I couldn't believe the feeling in that room and the love and these guys were sitting up in their chairs. They weren't talking to their neighbor. They were engaged. They were like asking what is this?
I know.
It's the exact opposite of what I thought it would be. And then it hit me, like you were saying, and this is why I'm bringing it up. The only difference between me and these guys in prison is I didn't get caught when I was drunk driving.
Exactly.
Or I didn't do, I was fortunate enough not to hurt anyone. They just had some bad luck. They're just like me. That's kind of where my head went. I was like, yeah. So when you say that, it just made sense. Like that's what that reminded me of.
Yeah. Yeah. So many of the inmates in there, especially in general population, are in there for drugs.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have the family or the resources or the ability to go to treatment, that's where you end up.
Yeah.
And so that was really hard. So I worked at the prison, then I worked at a place called First Step House. And they were wonderful. They supported me through my whole education. I worked there for 6 years. I love the nonprofits.
Wow.
I felt like there was a lot of accountability when you're working in county funded, like there's audits and versus private.
Absolutely. Right. So that's how you went and got all your degrees and working there. Wow.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is kind of a little segue because I love this story is amazing. How did you get into horses and and Olympic weightlifter and snowboarding and all this other stuff? Like, was this also going on at the same time you're going back to school and working? And like, when did and maybe it started obviously when you were younger as well, but obviously you lost yourself for a minute.
Yeah.
So how did that, let's talk about those things.
Yeah, for sure.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So I rode horses. So my mom and I are big horse people. When I was really young, she was a horse trainer. So I've ridden horses all my life.
And don't you have a horse?
I have a horse, Benny. Yeah.
Benny, yes. You said it's your big dog.
He is my big dog. Yeah. Horses are like dogs. Some people don't understand, but they are.
Yeah. So that's cool that you have. I wanted to point that out.
Yeah. He's great. He can be a pain in the butt, but he's great.
Sure.
So I did that a lot when I was younger, and then, I was using for all those years. But then when I was done with grad school, I was like, I need to start taking better care of myself. So I actually started doing CrossFit, and then, and then got into Olympic weightlifting, which is what I do now. Wow. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Impressive.
So I've been doing it for 10 years.
Dang.
Yeah. 2014 is when I started.
Okay.
And then, I snowboarded again when I was younger, lost it for a long time, came back. I do that now, do that every winter. So I've been doing that for 20 years.
Okay.
And then, 2 years ago, and this is has been a life dream of mine. I was able to get a boat and wake surf. So Lake Powell is the place that saved my life. Like the Haven used to go on yearly trips and take a bunch of houseboats. And it was a really magical time, like meetings around the fire and and Lake Powell saved my life. Really.
Whoa. Yeah. Lake Powell is magical.
It is.
But then when you go down there and you add a meeting of a bunch of people around a fire with the Milky Way galaxy beaming over your head and everyone's getting vulnerable. Yeah. Talk about a connection, right?
It was.
You're right. It's magical.
It was magic. It was, honestly, you know, that's where I want to live. That's where I want to retire. Right. People are like, why would you want to go to like Page or Lake Powell? But I'm like, it saved my life.
Yeah.
It saved my life. And, you know, last year actually just a few months ago, I went and I took another treatment center down there on my boat. And so it's come full circle.
Yeah.
I was doing that. I was right.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're giving back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is giving back so important to you?
I think that I thought I was broken and couldn't be fixed.
Yeah.
And I thought that for a long time, that something was wrong with me. And then I figured out like I wasn't broken.
Yeah.
And so many of the people we work with, they just never think they're going to get better.
Yeah.
Right. And so helping those people that think they are never going to change.
Yeah.
That is the power for me.
For sure.
Right. Seeing people that are hopeless, hate themselves, want to die. That was me.
Yeah. You can relate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. You're not broken. So I have this quote right here on my wall. Do you mind reading it for our listeners to
the most delightful surprise in life is to suddenly recognize there's nothing wrong with you. Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, exactly.
So my clients are come in and sit right where you're sitting. On day one, I'll have them read that out loud, and without fail, they'll just start crying.
100%.
And I'll say, have you ever heard that? And they're like, no one's ever told me that. Right. Or I don't believe it. I want to believe it, but I don't believe it. I'm like, well, it's true, but I'm going to show you how that's true.
Yes.
It's going to take a minute though.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You just have to wait for the miracle to happen.
Exactly.
And, you know,
But that is amazing that you're giving back now. And it's like you said, it's come full circle.
Right.
Like what a journey.
It has been a journey, yeah. And then, you know, coming over to Balance House in 2016, and they had no clinical program when I started. So I started the clinical program, and now I have 12 therapists, and it's really cool.
So you were the one that got it going. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at you.
I don't even know how it happened. Yeah. I just have, you know.
You ever like pinch yourself and go, I can't believe this is where all of that led to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's insane. I feel I'm so grateful. So many people don't make it out, right? And I made it out, and now I have this beautiful life. And, you know, granted, I worked really hard to get where I am. Yeah. Right?
No, again, you're a driven person. Yeah. I can feel it. I can tell by what you've done and what you've been through that it takes someone who's driven, who doesn't give up. You could easily have given up several times along the path, even after you were clean. Right. You still, this is too hard. This is too much. I'm done fighting. You know what I mean?
Yes, I wanted to give up.
I know, yeah, but you didn't.
I didn't.
And that's a good message for everyone listening to us right now. You guys need to hear this. Don't give up, because I promise. I have a quote that I heard on Chris Williamson's podcast. And he said, he's quoting, I think the name is Dipin Parmar. And the quote is this: the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding.
100%. I love that.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
I know, I heard that. I was like, bingo.
Yeah.
But it's true though. Like a lot of people would say, I want to do what Catie's doing. Okay. But this didn't just fall into your lap. You had to work your butt off to have it. Yeah. Fair?
Fair, yes. Yeah.
So you put in the work, and now you're experiencing the magic, right?
Yeah. I was thinking, you know, when you reached out, so I'll have 15 years sober on December 8th.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah. I look back,
so
and
cool.
You know, this time of year, you know, 15 years ago was one of the worst weeks of my life. First 2 weeks, you know, right before you get sober, it's usually the worst week.
Brutal.
Right.
Yeah.
So I always try to be grateful and realize like life could be way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could. Yeah. You know, I heard a quote once from one of my clients, and I put it to my memory because I didn't want to forget it, because I thought how profound, and it kind of represents what you do. And it goes like this. I tried to find myself I could not see. I tried to find my God eluded me. I tried to find my brother, I found all three.
Oh, wow.
Right? And when he said that, I said the same thing. I'm like, wow. Dude, I'm stealing that from you. Yeah. I'm going to memorize that sucker. I'm going to share it, because that's what it's about.
I'm stealing that from you.
Yeah, steal it, yeah. Because it's not mine. Right. You can have it.
Yeah.
But that really represents what you're doing here. Like you are now giving back, making a difference. Or in other words, you are finding your brother or sister who's out there struggling and making a difference in their lives. And therefore, look what it does to you. It buoys you up. It puts you in that position. And people listen to you and learn from you because they go, well, look what she went through and where she is now. I want to be like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Which is so weird.
Yeah. I mean, I know you don't seek that, but it's like that's
totally.
really what happens is clients come into your place and go, wow, if Catie's been through this and here she is now, there's some hope for me that I could go down that same path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that's what for my guys at Balance House or the women I work with is, pushing them to see that they are capable.
Yeah.
They're not broken and they're loved. Right.
Yeah.
And working with the families now at Balance House, we're a family heavy program. And, I tell the parents it's hard to know what to do when you're trying to keep your child alive.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And so working with those families and actually being able to help the families too, because I wish my family would have had that support.
Totally.
Right. So being there and talking to that mom or to that dad, right. And seeing.
Well, and I'm laughing now because again, what we said earlier, life happens for you.
Right.
And look what you went through and see, you're noticing that there's a void in the family part of this. So therefore, what did you do? Because you went through this kind of the same thing. Now you're making sure that's implemented in your program.
Yes.
You never would have done that had you not gone through the experience of not having that at the time.
100%. 100%.
So I that's why I'm giggling because I get giddy because I really do believe that every choice you made, even as a young girl, led to this very moment today. And here we are talking about it. What? Right.
Yeah. It's like, it's magic. It's magic. And yeah, I mean, just being really blessed with the people in my life, and life happens to you, and I just didn't give up. I just kept pushing through, and
you did.
Yeah, and then like learning about all the mental health, and now being a trauma therapist, and working with people now to heal, and looking at things from an attachment lens and a relationship lens. I mean, that has changed my world too.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've obviously have done a lot. You've done a lot of schooling. You know, you've earned some amazing degrees. You're doing great things at Balance House. What do you have any future plans of doing other things? I mean, you're very driven, like we talked about. Any big ideas that you're cultivating in your mind that you want to do down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we really want to open a women's program. Okay. Right. And I miss a women's trauma program. And then, myself and one of my coworkers, we're starting to do intensives for families and for individuals. So whether they're 2 or 3 day intensives, we can go to them, they can come to us. Right. Because there's so much work underneath that can't happen, whether it's in treatment or, if they're back in their environment, all of their stuff comes up. So starting an intensive program. I want to do a community IOP. I mean, I have all the ideas.
Yeah. That's great though.
Yeah.
But those are good things. And sounds like the next progression in what you've already created, if you will. Yeah. Right. That's the next progression to continue to grow it. So, and then you reach out to more women, obviously. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
It's been really fun to, I present nationally, and I get to go to different conferences and present, and awesome. I never thought I would like that, and I love it.
You love it. Yeah. Well, again, because you're speaking from your heart and you're speaking from your own experience, you're being authentic. That's when you're at your best, when you're authentic, right?
Yes.
Have you ever thought about writing a book?
Oh my gosh. That's like thinking about grad or a doctorate. I've thought about it. I've thought about it multiple times. It scares me a bit.
Well, the reason why I bring this up, because I had someone tell me this once. He asked me a question. This guy, he was a ghost writer for someone who's very famous here in Utah. And he asked me the question, how do you leave a legacy? He asked me that question. I was like, I don't know, live a good life, be kind to people, kind of the standard answer. And he goes, no. He goes, those are good, don't get me wrong, but the only way you can leave a legacy is if you write your story down. Yeah. So 100 years from now, someone could read Catie's story. Imagine some girl in her senior year who just moved from one state to another, who's going through the same thing you went through, reading your book, and you're not even here, but yet it's changing your life because she gets to read what you did and how you made it.
Yeah, it's really powerful to think of it that way. Yeah.
Not that you have to go write a book. I'm just saying that.
I don't know. You gave me the idea. I might just go for it.
But I think your story is powerful, and it really does resonate. And I mean, I felt your power today, and just the things that you're doing. I'm blown away, honestly.
Yeah. Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It's a good reminder to talk about where I came from.
For sure.
Right? Yeah.
If someone's listening to your voice right now, like this very moment, who's in a dark place, they're struggling, they're not sure what to do, what would you tell that one person right now?
I think I'd tell that one person they're not broken, and that there are ways to heal, and there are people that want to help you.
Yeah.
Right. I wish someone would have told me that. So I hope those that are listening and they think that they want to give up, or that they can't be put back together. I always describe it as like, I felt like I was shattered into a million pieces.
Yeah.
And had to be put back together. But it was always within me. It wasn't broken.
Yeah.
So I hope that the listeners can hear that and feel that there is a way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Great advice. Great, beautifully said. Well, if someone wants to reach out to you, Catie, and know more about what you do, learn more about Balance House, maybe even have someone who's struggling and they want to get them into your program, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way would be to go on the Balance House website, which is just balancehouse.com, or just reach out to me via email, Catie@balancehouse.com, or my Instagram. So it's at Catie Thielen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll put those links in the show notes when we go live, so people can just click and get right there. But I challenge everyone who's listening to your story today to reach out to you, ask you a question, go take a tour of Balance House, check out all the good stuff you're doing. And if you have a loved one who's struggling and you're not sure what to do, reach out to Catie.
Please.
And she will obviously help. Look what she's done. Look what she's doing now. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But crazy cool.
It's hard to find therapists right now. So if you need help with that, please reach out to me. And I'm happy to guide and help in any way possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Catie, thanks for being on the show today. It's great to really get to know you a lot better today.
Me too.
I'm the one being blessed because I get to sit here with you face to face. Thank you for all the good you're doing. You are helping create magic in people's worlds because now you're experiencing it and you know what that looks like and what it feels like. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much, Todd. This means a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, there you go, folks. I told you we're in for a treat today. Catie from Balance House, she's amazing, doing great things, and I agree with her. You're not broken. You may feel that way, but you're not, and that's the lie that we buy into sometimes. Reach out to her. You can even reach out to me. As you guys well know, I'm here to help you as well. We love you. We believe in you, and we know you can do this. Again, thanks to my sponsors. You guys are so great to believe in me, to even support this. Blows my mind. So yeah, till next time, everyone. Love you.